Jake Morris was tired. He had been flying his cargo ship, the Starboard Drift, for 3 weeks straight. The route from Earth to the mining colonies was long and boring. Nothing ever happened out here in the empty space between stars. Just darkness, silence, and the quiet hum of the ship's engines. He was drinking his 4th cup of coffee that day when the alarm went off. A red light flashed on his control panel. The computer was picking up a signal. An emergency beacon. Jake sat up straight in his chair and looked at the screen. The signal was coming from a small moon about 2 hours away. It was an uninhabited rock covered in ice. Nobody lived there. Nobody even visited there. So why was there an emergency beacon? He checked the signal again. It was weak but steady. Someone was in trouble. The smart thing to do was ignore it. He had a schedule to keep. The mining colonies were waiting for their supplies. If he was late, he would lose money. And Jake needed money. His ship was old, and repairs were expensive, but he could not ignore it. Someone out there needed help. Maybe they were hurt. Maybe they were dying. He could not just fly past and pretend he did not hear their call for help. Jake changed course and headed for the frozen moon. 2 hours later, he entered the moon's thin atmosphere. His sensors searched for the source of the beacon. It did not take long to find it. There was a crashed ship on the surface, half buried in ice and snow. It was small, probably a shuttle of some kind. And it was not human. Jake had seen alien ships before. Humanity had been traveling among the stars for over 200 years now. They had met dozens of alien species. Some were friendly, some were not. But out here in the outer rim, you never knew what you might find. He landed the Starboard Drift about 50 meters from the crash site. Then he put on his environment suit and stepped outside. The cold hit him immediately. Even through his suit, he could feel it. The temperature was far below freezing. Nothing could survive out here for long without protection. He walked toward the crashed shuttle. It was badly damaged. One side was completely crushed. The metal was torn and twisted. Whatever had happened to this ship, it had happened hard and fast. Jake found the door and forced it open. Inside, the shuttle was dark. His helmet light cut through the shadows. He saw alien writing on the walls, symbols he did not recognize. The technology looked advanced, more advanced than anything humans had. Then he saw her. She was lying on the floor near the back of the shuttle. An alien female. Her skin was silver, like polished metal, but soft and smooth. Long tendrils grew from her head instead of hair, and they glowed faintly with a soft blue light. Her eyes were closed. She was not moving. Jake rushed to her side and knelt down. He could see she was badly hurt. There was blood on her clothes, dark purple blood that had dried and crusted. Her breathing was shallow and weak. He did not know anything about alien medicine. He did not know if human first aid would help her or hurt her. But he had to try something. He could not just watch her die. He picked her up carefully. She was lighter than he expected. He carried her out of the crashed shuttle and back to his ship. The cold wind howled around him as he walked. His arms ached from the weight, but he did not stop. Inside the Starboard Drift. He laid her down on the medical bed in the small sick bay. He cleaned her wounds as best he could. He bandaged the cuts and stopped the bleeding. He gave her water when she woke up briefly, and she drank it before falling unconscious again. For 3 days, he watched over her. He did not sleep much. He checked on her every few hours. He changed her bandages. He made sure she was warm and comfortable. On the 4th day, she opened her eyes. Jake was sitting in a chair next to her bed, reading an old book, when he heard her move. He looked up and saw those violet eyes staring at him. They were beautiful and strange, like nothing he had ever seen. She tried to speak, but he could not understand her language. It sounded musical, with rising and falling tones that meant nothing to him. She looked frustrated and scared. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He spoke slowly and clearly. "You are safe. I found you. I helped you. You are safe." She did not understand his words either, but something in his tone seemed to calm her. She stopped trying to speak and just looked at him. Her eyes studied his face, searching for something. Then she reached into a pocket in her torn clothing and pulled out a small device. She touched it, and it made a soft clicking sound. Then she spoke again. This time, he understood her. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice was quiet and weak. "You are on my ship," Jake said. "The starward drift. I found your crashed shuttle on that frozen moon. You were hurt badly, so I brought you here." She closed her eyes for a moment. "My shuttle. The attack. I remember now. Attack?" Jake leaned forward. "Someone attacked you?" She opened her eyes and looked at him. There was fear in those violet depths and something else. Pain. Old pain that had nothing to do with her wounds. "Yes," she said, "but I cannot speak of it. Not yet. I am not ready." Jake nodded. He understood. Everyone had things they did not want to talk about. He was not going to push her. "That is fine," he said. "You do not have to tell me anything. Just rest. Get better. We can figure everything else out later." She stared at him for a long moment. Her expression was strange, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why did you help me? You do not know me. You do not know my people. Why did you risk yourself to save me?" Jake thought about the question. It was a fair one. He did not have a complicated answer. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And I was there. That is all." She continued to stare at him. Then, slowly, she nodded. Something in her eyes changed. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too. Trust. Just a little bit, but it was there. "My name is Valera," she said. "Valera Shendreth." Jake smiled at her. "Nice to meet you, Valera. I am Jake. Jake Morris. Welcome aboard the Starward Drift." She did not smile back. She was too tired and too hurt for that. But she nodded again, and her eyes closed as sleep took her. Jake sat back in his chair and watched her rest. He did not know who she was or where she came from. He did not know who had attacked her or why. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to abandon her. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 3 months passed aboard the Starward Drift. Valera grew stronger every day. Her wounds healed, and her strength returned. She began to eat regular meals and walk around the ship without help. The color came back to her silver skin, and the glow of her tendrils became brighter. Jake continued his cargo runs during this time. He still had to make money to keep the ship running. Valera stayed aboard, hiding whenever they docked at stations or met other ships. She was not ready to be seen by anyone else yet. Jake did not ask questions. He gave her space and time, but slowly she began to open up. It started with small things. She would join him in the cockpit while he flew the ship. She would ask questions about human culture, human food, human music. Jake answered everything honestly, even when his answers made her confused or surprised. She was amazed by human coffee. She did not understand why humans would drink something so bitter. But after trying it once, she became addicted. Jake had to hide his supply so she would not drink it all. She was confused by human humor. Jake told her jokes, and she stared at him blankly. Then, hours later, she would suddenly laugh out loud as she finally understood the joke. It always made Jake smile. She was fascinated by human stubbornness. Among her people, she explained, giving up was sometimes seen as wisdom. If a task was too difficult, it was logical to stop trying. But humans never seemed to stop trying. Even when it was clearly hopeless, Jake just shrugged when she said this. "We are too stupid to know when to quit," he said with a grin. Valera did not think that was true. She thought it was something else. Something she did not have a word for yet. One night, they sat together in the small common room of the ship. Jake was eating a bowl of noodles. Valera was drinking her third cup of coffee. The stars drifted past the window, slow and silent. "Jake," she said suddenly, "I need to tell you something." He looked up from his noodles. Her face was serious. Her violet eyes were fixed on him. "All right," he said. "I am listening." She took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly as they held the coffee cup. "I have not been honest with you," she said, "about who I am, about where I come from. I was afraid to tell you the truth, but you have been so kind to me. You deserve to know." Jake set down his bowl. He gave her his full attention. "My people are called the Velkoroth," she began. "We control a large part of the galaxy, over 200 star systems. We have been a great empire for thousands of years." Jake nodded. He had heard of the Velkoroth Dominion. Everyone had. They were one of the most powerful alien civilizations in known space. Humanity had very little contact with them. They kept to themselves mostly. "And you are from this empire?" he asked. Valera looked down at her coffee. "I am not just from this empire, Jake. I am part of the royal family. My mother is the Empress, the ruler of all Velkoroth worlds. And I am her third daughter. I am a princess." Jake stared at her. For a moment, he did not know what to say. A princess. He had rescued a princess. An actual alien princess was sitting in his ship, drinking his coffee. "Well," he said finally, "that is not what I expected." Valera looked up at him. She seemed nervous, like she was waiting for something, waiting for him to change, to treat her differently now that he knew the truth. But Jake just picked up his noodles again and took another bite. "So," he said between chews, "what happened? Why were you running? Why did someone attack you?" Valera blinked. She seemed surprised by his calm reaction. "You are not going to bow?" she asked. "You are not going to call me by my titles? You are not going to ask for favors or rewards?" Jake laughed. "Should I? Would it make you feel better?" "No," she admitted. "It would not. It is just what everyone else does when they learn who I am. They change. They become false and calculating. They want things from me." "I do not want anything from you," Jake said honestly. "Well, maybe I want you to leave some coffee for me. But that is about it." Valera stared at him. Then something happened that Jake had never seen before. She smiled. It was small and uncertain, like she had forgotten how to do it. But it was real. "You are strange, Jake Morris," she said. "I have been called worse," he replied. She laughed softly. Then she began to tell him her story. 3 years ago, she had been traveling between worlds with a convoy of guards. It was a routine trip to visit her sister on a distant colony. But someone had planned an attack. A faction within the Dominion wanted to weaken her mother's rule. They saw Valera as an easy target. The attack came without warning. Ships appeared from nowhere and opened fire. Her guards fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. One by one, they fell. In the end, only a few were left, and they made a desperate choice. They put Valera in an escape pod and launched it before the enemy could capture her. She watched through the small window as the last of her protectors died fighting. Then her pod's navigation system failed, damaged by the battle. She drifted into unknown space with no way to steer and no way to call for help. She drifted for months. She ran out of food. She ran out of hope. She crashed on that frozen moon and waited to die. Then Jake found her. "I thought I would never see my home again," she said quietly. "I thought my mother and sisters believed I was dead. I thought I would be forgotten." Jake reached across the table and put his hand on hers. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. "You are not forgotten," he said. "You are here. You survived. And if you want to go home, I will take you there." Valera looked at him with wide eyes. "You would do that?" "The Velkarth Dominion is far from here. Very far. The journey would take many months. Maybe a full year. It would be dangerous. You might not survive." Jake shrugged. "I have made dangerous trips before. And you want to go home. Your family thinks you are dead. They should know the truth. But why?" She asked again. "Why would you help me? What do you want in return?" Jake smiled at her. It was a warm smile, honest and simple. "I already told you," he said. "Because you need help. That is all. That is enough." Valera did not understand him. Among her people, everything was political. Everything was calculated. Nobody did anything without expecting something in return. But this human, this strange and stubborn human, seemed to genuinely want nothing from her. It scared her a little. But it also made her feel something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. "Thank you, Jake," she said softly. "Thank you for everything." Jake squeezed her hand gently and smiled. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we start planning the trip to your home. It is going to be a long journey." Valera nodded. She stood up and walked toward her room. At the door, she stopped and looked back at him. "Jake," she said, double quotes, "yes? You really are strange. But I think I like it." Jake laughed. "Get some sleep, princess." She smiled again, a real smile this time, and disappeared into her room. Jake sat alone in the common room, looking out at the stars. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. The Velkarth Dominion was powerful and mysterious. The journey would be long and dangerous. He might not come back, but he was going to try anyway. Because that was what humans did. They helped people who needed help. Even when it was hard. Even when it was dangerous. Even when it did not make sense. He finished his noodles, washed his bowl, and went to bed. Tomorrow would be the start of a new adventure. The journey to the Velkarth Dominion took 11 months. 11 months of flying through unknown space, following star charts that Valera drew from memory. 11 months of danger, adventure, and discovery. Jake had never been so far from home. Human space was far behind them now. Out here, the stars were different. The nebulae glowed with colors he had never seen. The planets were strange and alien. Everything was new. Valera guided him through this unknown territory. She knew the major routes and the dangerous areas. She warned him about hostile species and helped him navigate through safe passages. Without her, he would have been lost within the first week. But even with her help, the journey was not easy. The first real trouble came 3 months into the trip. They were passing through a region called the Kethari Nebula when the pirates found them. 3 ships appeared on Jake's sensors without warning. They were fast and heavily armed. Before Jake could react, they had surrounded the starward drift. A voice crackled over the communication system. It spoke in a language Jake did not understand, but his translator picked it up. "Human ship. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist and you will be destroyed." Jake looked at Valera. She was pale, her silver skin almost white with fear. "Kethari raiders," she whispered. "They are pirates. Very dangerous. They will take everything we have. Maybe they will kill us. Maybe they will sell us as slaves." Jake thought quickly. His ship was not built for combat. He had one small weapon, barely enough to scare off asteroids. Against 3 armed pirate ships, he had no chance in a straight fight. But Jake had never liked straight fights anyway. Valera, he said calmly, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She looked at him with frightened eyes. Then she nodded slowly. Good, Jake said. Hold on to something. He grabbed the controls and did something stupid. Instead of running away from the pirates, he flew straight at them. The lead pirate ship was directly ahead. Jake aimed the starward drift right at its center and pushed the engines to maximum. The old cargo ship groaned and shook as it accelerated. The pirates were not expecting this. Their formation broke apart as they tried to avoid a collision. Jake pulled up at the last second, missing the lead ship by meters. The pirates scattered in confusion. In that moment of chaos, Jake dove into the nebula itself. The thick clouds of gas and dust swallowed the starward drift. Sensors became useless. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The pirates followed, but they were cautious now. They did not know what this crazy human was planning. Jake knew the nebula was dangerous. The gases could damage engines. The dust could clog systems. Flying blind in here was suicide. But Jake had an idea. He found what he was looking for after 10 minutes of careful flying. A pocket of dense gas, almost solid, hiding a massive asteroid. He flew behind the asteroid and powered down everything. Engines, lights, life support, everything except the minimum needed to keep them alive. The starward drift went dark and silent. The pirates searched for hours. Their ships passed close by several times. But without power signatures to track, they could not find the small cargo ship hiding in the darkness. Eventually, they gave up and left. Jake waited another hour before powering the ship back up. When the engines hummed to life, he let out a long breath he did not realize he had been holding. Valera stared at him in amazement. How did you do that? She asked. That was insane. That should not have worked. Jake grinned at her. The first rule of being human. When you cannot win, cheat. She did not understand what he meant, but she laughed anyway. It was the first time she had truly laughed since he met her. The second major challenge came 6 months into the journey. They stopped at a trading station to buy supplies. Jake needed fuel and food. The station was run by a species called the Tarathi, large beings with gray skin and 4 arms. Everything was going well until Jake accidentally offended a merchant lord. He did not mean to do it. He simply refused to pay a bribe that the merchant demanded. Among humans, this was normal. Among the Tarathi, refusing a bribe was a deadly insult. The merchant lord, whose name was Krathmal, challenged Jake to something called the Trial of Worth. Valera went pale when she heard this. Jake, you cannot accept, she said urgently. The Trial of Worth is a drinking contest. The Tarathi use a drink called Vethka. It is poison to most species. Even a small amount could kill you. Jake looked at the merchant lord. Krathmal was huge, 3 times Jake's size, with arms thick as tree trunks. He was grinning with sharp teeth, confident that this small human would refuse and bring shame upon himself. If Jake refused, they would not be allowed to buy supplies. They might not even be allowed to leave the station alive. The Tarathi did not forgive insults easily. How much do I have to drink? Jake asked. Krathmal laughed. Until one of us cannot drink anymore. The winner takes all. Jake nodded slowly. All right. Let us do this. Valera grabbed his arm. Jake, no. This is suicide. He looked at her and smiled. Trust me. The contest began. The Vethka was served in large bowls. It smelled like acid and looked like liquid fire. Krathmal drank the first bowl easily, his forearms holding the container as he poured it down his throat. Jake picked up his bowl. He could feel the heat coming off the liquid. This was a terrible idea. He drank it anyway. The Vethka burned. It burned his mouth, his throat, his stomach. His eyes watered. His hands shook. but he kept drinking until the bowl was empty. The crowd watched in stunned silence. No one expected the human to survive the first bowl. They drank a second bowl, then a third, then a fourth. By the fifth bowl, Krathmal was sweating. His movements were slower. His eyes were unfocused. Jake was also suffering. His vision was blurry. His hands would not stop shaking. His whole body felt like it was on fire. But he kept going. The sixth bowl finally ended it. Krathmal took one drink and collapsed. His massive body hit the floor with a crash that shook the room. He was unconscious, defeated by a creature a third his size. Jake sat in his chair, barely able to move. The Vethka had nearly killed him. He could feel his organs screaming in protest. He would need days to recover, but he had won. The Tarathi erupted in cheers. They had never seen anything like this. A human had outdrunk a Tarathi lord. It was impossible, yet it had happened. Krathmal woke up an hour later. Instead of being angry, he was impressed. He called Jake a worthy warrior and gave him all the supplies he needed for free. He even gave Jake a gift, a bottle of Vethka for the journey. Jake thanked him politely and threw the bottle into space. The moment they left the station, Valira watched all of this with growing wonder. She had seen many things in her life as a princess. She had met warriors and diplomats, generals and kings. But she had never met anyone like Jake Morris. He was not the strongest. He was not the smartest. He was not the most skilled. But he had something else. Something she was only beginning to understand. He never gave up. No matter what happened, no matter how bad things got, he kept going. He found a way. As they continued their journey toward her home, Valera realized something important. She was not just grateful to Jake for saving her life. She was not just thankful for his help. She respected him, truly respected him, and that was something she had never felt for anyone. Outside her own family, the stars drifted past the window as they flew through the darkness. Home was getting closer every day, and Valera was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. The starward drift emerged from hyperspace, and Valera saw something she thought she would never see again. Her home, Valcora Prime, hung in the darkness of space like a jewel. It was beautiful beyond words. The planet was covered in vast oceans of deep purple and continents of shimmering gold. 3 moons circled it slowly, each one covered in gleaming cities. Ships moved through space around it, thousands of them, coming and going in an endless dance of commerce and travel. Valira pressed her hand against the window of the cockpit. Tears rolled down her silvered cheeks. "We made it," she whispered. "Jake, we actually made it." Jake smiled at her from the pilot's seat. He looked tired. The journey had been long and hard, but seeing her face at that moment made everything worth it. "I told you we would," he said, but their celebration was cut short. Warning alarms suddenly filled the cockpit. Jake looked at his sensors, and his blood went cold. Ships were approaching. Warships. Dozens of them. They were surrounding the starward drift from every direction. "Attention, unknown vessel," a voice boomed through the communication system. "You have entered Velcora's sovereign space without authorization. Power down your engines immediately. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Valera moved to the communication panel. "This is Princess Valera Shendrath of the royal bloodline. I am returning home after 3 years in exile. Stand down and escort me to the palace." There was silence for a long moment. Then the voice came back, colder than before. "Princess Valera Shendrath was declared dead 3 years ago. Your claim is either a lie or a trap. Power down your engines immediately. This is your final warning." Jake looked at Valera. Her face was pale, but she was not afraid. She was angry. "They do not believe me," she said through gritted teeth. They think I'm an imposter. Can you blame them? Jake said gently. You have been gone for 3 years. They'd probably get false claims all the time. She knew he was right, but it still hurt. She was home, finally home, and her own people were treating her like an enemy. What do we do? She asked. Jake thought for a moment. Then he reached for the communication panel. Valkorath Warships. This is Jake Morris of the human cargo vessel Starbound Drift. I understand your caution. The princess has been through a terrible experience, and I know her claim sounds impossible. But I swear to you, she is telling the truth. Human, the voice replied with obvious contempt. Your words mean nothing here. Prepare to be boarded. Jake nodded calmly. Understood. We will not resist. But I ask only one thing. When you board this ship, bring a medical scanner. Run a genetic test on the woman with me. Compare it to your royal records. If she is lying, you can arrest us both. But if she is telling the truth, you will have made a very big mistake. Another long silence followed. Then, a different voice came through the communication system. This one was older, more thoughtful. Human, you speak with unusual confidence. Very well. We will run your test. But if this is a trick, you will both be executed. Fair enough, Jake said. He powered down the engines and sat back in his chair. Now we wait. The boarding party arrived within minutes. 12 soldiers in heavy armor entered the Starbound Drift with weapons drawn. They were tall and muscular, their silver skin covered in ceremonial markings. They looked at Jake with suspicion and at Valera with doubt. The leader of the soldiers stepped forward. He was old for a Valkorath, his tendrils faded to a pale blue. But his eyes were sharp and intelligent. I am Commander Torvik, he said. I served in the palace guard for 40 years. I knew Princess Valera when she was a child. If you are truly her, you will remember me. Valera looked at him carefully. Then her eyes widened with recognition. Commander Torvik, she said softly. You taught me how to fight when I was 12 years old. I broke your nose during my 3rd lesson because I did not know how to control my strength. You laughed and said I would make a fine warrior someday. Torvik stared at her. His stern expression cracked slightly. The princess was the only person who ever broke my nose, he admitted. But that proves nothing. Anyone could have learned that story. Then test my blood, Valera said firmly. Test my genes. Compare them to the royal records. You will see the truth. Torvik nodded to one of his soldiers. The soldier stepped forward with a medical scanner and pressed it against Valera's arm. There was a soft hum as the device analyzed her blood. Everyone waited in tense silence. Then the scanner beeped. The soldier looked at the results. His eyes went wide. Commander, he said, his voice shaking. The genetic match is perfect. This is Princess Valera Shendrath. She is real. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Commander Torvik did something that shocked everyone. He dropped to one knee and bowed his head. Your Highness, he said, forgive us. We did not know. We did not dare to hope. The other soldiers followed his example, kneeling before Valera. She stood there, overwhelmed with emotion. Rise, she said finally. All of you. There is nothing to forgive. You were doing your duty. Torvik stood and looked at her with new eyes. There was wonder in his expression now and joy. The Empress must be told immediately, he said. She has mourned you every day since your disappearance. This news will change everything. He turned to Jake, who had remained silent throughout the entire exchange. And who is this human? Torvik asked. Valera stepped closer to Jake. This is Jake Morris. He found me dying on a frozen moon. He saved my life. He nursed me back to health. And when I told him I wanted to go home, he spent a year of his life flying through dangerous space to bring me here. Everything I am, everything I have, I owe to him." Torvik studied Jake with new interest. "A human did all this?" "Why?" Jake shrugged. "She needed help. I was there." The commander seemed confused by this simple answer. But before he could respond, orders came through his communication device. The Empress had been informed. She was waiting. The starward drift was escorted to the main palace complex on Velcora Prime. Jake had never seen anything so magnificent. The palace was enormous, covering an entire mountain. Its towers reached toward the sky like silver fingers. Its walls were decorated with precious gems and glowing crystals. Thousands of servants and guards moved through its halls. They were led to the throne room. It was a vast chamber, so large that Jake could not see the ceiling. Pillars of polished stone lined the walls. At the far end, sitting on a throne made of crystal, was the Empress. Matriarch Ashendra Shendrith was ancient. Her silver skin had faded to pale gray. Her tendrils glowed only faintly, but her eyes burned with power and intelligence. She was the ruler of 200 star systems. She had controlled the Dominion for over 500 years, and she was staring at her daughter with an expression that Jake could not read. Valera walked forward slowly. The distance between them felt infinite. "Mother," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The Empress said nothing. She simply looked at her daughter, looking at the proof that the dead had returned. Then, slowly, the ancient ruler rose from her throne. She descended the steps one by one, and when she reached Valera, she did something that shocked the entire court. She embraced her daughter. "My child," the Empress whispered. "My lost child. You have come home." Valera broke down in tears. 3 years of fear and loneliness poured out of her. She held her mother tightly, afraid that if she let go, this moment would turn out to be a dream. The court watched in stunned silence. The lost princess had returned, and behind her, standing alone in that magnificent throne room, Jake Morris smiled quietly to himself. He had done what he set out to do. Valera was home. His job was finished. Now he just had to figure out how to get back to human space. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today was a day for celebration. The celebration of Valera's return lasted for 7 days. Every world in the Dominion rejoiced. The people danced in the streets. Feasts were held in every city. Music played from dawn until midnight. The lost princess had come home, and nothing would ever be the same. During these days of celebration, Jake Morris stayed in a guest room in the palace. It was the most luxurious room he had ever seen. The bed was softer than clouds. The food was brought to him on silver trays. Servants attended to his every need. He had never experienced anything like it, but he was also uncomfortable. He did not belong here. He was a simple cargo pilot, not a diplomat or a noble. The fancy clothes they gave him felt strange on his body. The formal language everyone used made his head spin. He just wanted to get back to his ship and fly away. On the 8th day, something important happened. The traitors who had attacked Valera 3 years ago were found and captured. The investigation had been swift and brutal. The Empress did not forgive those who harmed her children. The faction that had planned the ambush was destroyed. Their leaders were arrested and brought to justice. Their followers scattered and hid. The threat to the throne was eliminated forever. With this matter resolved, the court turned its attention to another question. What should be done about the human? Jake was summoned to the throne room on the 9th day. He walked through the massive doors and found himself facing hundreds of Velkoreth nobles. They all stared at him with curious eyes. He was probably the first human most of them had ever seen. The Empress sat on her crystal throne. Valera stood beside her, wearing the formal robes of a princess. She looked different now, more confident, more like the royalty she truly was. Jake walked forward until he stood before the throne. He was not sure what he was supposed to do, so he simply stood there and waited. "Jake Morris of humanity," the Empress said. Her voice filled the room without effort. "You stand before the court of the Velkorath Dominion. You have done something that no outsider has ever done. You have saved the life of a member of the royal bloodline. You have returned a lost daughter to her mother. The Dominion owes you a debt." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, Your Majesty, I did not do it for a reward. I just did what anyone would do." A murmur ran through the crowd. The nobles seemed confused by his words. The Empress leaned forward slightly. "You traveled for a year through dangerous space. You risked your life against pirates and hostile species. You gave up everything to bring my daughter home. And you expect nothing in return." Jake thought about it for a moment. "Well, I give you some fuel for my ship. And maybe some food. The trip back to human space is pretty long." The court erupted in whispers. This human was either incredibly humble or incredibly stupid. The nobles could not decide which, but the Empress smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. "You are an unusual creature, Jake Morris," she said. "My daughter has told me many stories about your journey together. She says you never asked for payment. You never demanded favors. You simply helped her because she needed help. Is this true?" "Yes," Jake said simply. "And if I offered you wealth beyond imagination, land, power, would you accept?" Jake looked around the throne room. He saw the gold and the jewels. He saw the power and the glory. It was tempting. Anyone would be tempted. But then he looked at the starward drift, visible through a window. His old, battered ship. His home. "I appreciate the offer," he said. "But I'm just a cargo pilot. I would not know what to do with wealth or power. All I want is to get back to flying. That is what makes me happy." The Empress studied him for a long moment. Then she rose from her throne and did something extraordinary. She walked down the steps and stood directly before Jake, an Empress of 200 worlds, standing face to face with a simple human. "In all my centuries of rule," she said quietly, "I have met many beings. Kings and generals, diplomats and warriors. They all wanted something. They all had agendas and plans. But you, Jake Morris, want nothing. You helped my daughter simply because it was the right thing to do." She turned to face the assembled court. "Let it be known throughout the Dominion," she announced. "From this day forward, Jake Morris of humanity is to be honored with the title of Kelvatar, Friend of the Crown. He is to be welcomed in any world under our protection. Any who harm him, harm us. Any who aid him, aid us. He is under the eternal protection of the Velkorath Dominion." The court erupted in cheers. Jake stood there, stunned. He had no idea what to say. The Empress smiled at him again. "You may refuse our wealth, Jake Morris, but you cannot refuse our gratitude. The Kelvatar title has only been given 3 times in our history. You are the first non-Velkorath to ever receive it." Jake bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am honored." The ceremony concluded, and the court began to disperse. Jake was surrounded by nobles who wanted to meet him, to shake his hand, to hear his stories. He answered their questions politely, but his eyes kept drifting toward the door. Eventually, he found a moment to escape. He slipped away from the crowd and walked toward the landing pad where the starward drift was waiting. But someone was waiting for him there. Valera stood beside his ship, still wearing her formal robes. She looked beautiful in the light of the 3 moons. Her tendrils glowed softly, and her violet eyes reflected the stars. "You are leaving," she said. It was not a question. Jake nodded. "I have to. This is not my world. I do not belong here." Valera stepped closer to him. "You could stay. You would be comfortable here. Safe. Honored. You would never have to worry about anything again. Jake smiled at her. I know, and part of me is tempted. But I am a pilot, Valera. I need to fly. I need to see new stars and new worlds. Staying in one place, even a place as beautiful as this, would feel like a cage. She understood. She had always understood him, even when others could not. I will miss you, she said softly. Jake reached out and took her hand. Her silver skin was warm against his. I will miss you too, he said. These past months have been the greatest adventure of my life. I will never forget them. I will never forget you. Valera smiled. There were tears in her eyes, but she was not sad. She was grateful. Will you ever come back? She asked. Jake grinned at her, that same crooked grin she had come to know so well. Try to stop me, he said. I have a friend here now. A very important friend. I will definitely come back to visit. Maybe I will bring some coffee from Earth. I know how much you love that stuff. She laughed through her tears. I would like that. I would like that very much. They stood there for a moment longer, holding hands beneath the alien stars. Then Jake released her and walked toward his ship. At the door, he stopped and looked back. Take care of yourself. Princess, he said. Take care of yourself. Pilot, she replied. Jake entered the starward drift and closed the door behind him. Minutes later, the old cargo ship lifted off from the landing pad and rose into the sky. An honor guard of Dominion warships escorted him to the edge of Velkarnath space, just as the Empress had ordered. Valera watched him go. She stood on the landing pad until his ship was just a tiny dot of light among the stars. Even then, she did not leave. Jake Morris had taught her something important during their journey together. He had taught her that kindness did not need a reason, that helping someone did not require a reward, that sometimes the greatest strength was simply refusing to give up. She would remember these lessons for the rest of her life, and somewhere out there, among the endless stars, a simple human cargo pilot flew toward new adventures. He had a title now, Friend of the Crown, but he did not care about that. He had helped someone who needed help. That was enough. Jake Morris set his course for human space and smiled. It was good to be flying again. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and Jake had a feeling that this was only the beginning.